Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town and spend a year there and trade and make a profit. Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. As it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. So whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him it is sin.
What are we, are we going on 7 years here as a church? 7 years. So about, as Midtown. Yeah. It's about 8 years ago, I guess, when I received my call from the Lord to be a church planner and a pastor. Wasn't on my bucket list, to let you know. Wasn't even my list of things I'd like to do in life. Doesn't mean I'm not enjoying it, don't get me wrong. It just wasn't on the radar until God put it on the radar very clearly through a professor at seminary, right? I'm at seminary, not planning on being a pastor. I knew some ministry, teens, youth work, whatnot. And he basically just said to my face, you need to start a church, this, that, and the other. And so we went through the formal process, me and my wife, of getting assessed. Were we capable, and did we have the skill set to do this? And it was a resounding yes across the board. In fact, it wasn't just yes, it was Greg, you have the skill sets to create, ironically, a large church rather quickly. So I set out to do that. And I didn't get that just from one person. We got that from multiple assessing groups and people in the area. And I set out to do what was on my heart. Go start a church. I was taught how to do it. Many classes at seminary and conferences and whatnot. How you take the surveys and you check out the demographics and you ask your questions and you find your location and you raise the funds and the whole gauntlet. I knew how to do it. I couldn't pull it off. I hit resistance. In fact, me and my wife, we ended up giving up, really didn't have any income, $200 to the church's name when we started in a park down in West Melbourne. And God had a different plan. I knew one thing, though. This is all I knew to be true, that I did not fully understand the gospel. And my question rooted in how does the Old Testament and New Testament truly come together to create one gospel? And of course, the answer is Jesus, and we were taught how to add Jesus into the sermons and whatnot. And seminary was great, absolutely great. To me, it was being taught the mechanics of how to become a preacher, pastor, church planner, whatever. It just wasn't sitting, and for a good reason, because God shut down the plans, and they never left the grounds. As time went on in the church, we struggled financially. I can't say we struggled because God used you to pay the bills every month. But it kept me and our leaders in a place of trust and faith, which was absolutely the place we had to be at in order to know what the gospel is. In fact, I was sitting at Meemaw's beachside with an old man who said, just tell me how much money you need and I'll give it to you. And we'll make this problem go away. I said, I can't tell you that. That's got to be what's on your heart. He said, well, I've got up to $250,000 designated for a church locally. He said, but you have to do one thing. You need to recant one of your beliefs. I said, we're done. It's not going to happen. I don't need the money that much. And walked away knowing that we would continue to be in the same position we were in. And so I went out and started my business up and, provided some funds on the side for my family. And I feel like for 7 years, God prepared me for this message today in the next 3 weeks. What's His will on your life? What's God's will for your life? I'll tell you something. Where we're at today, and I'm not talking metrics that can necessarily be measured by bank accounts and Excel sheets. But if you survey the spiritual health of this group here, we are in a far better position than we would have been if I succeeded in my plan 6 years ago. I could have destroyed you. But the Lord stepped in. And He stopped it. And He taught me through very hard lessons what the gospel is and what you need to know. And the essence of it is to trust in Him, no matter what. And you don't learn that when life's going easy and good and things are working as you hope. You learn that through affliction and pain and suffering. My will, thy will. I organized it like that because what I've seen in my life, and I believe will happen in yours if it hasn't already, is my will evolves into His will, becomes thy will. James hits on this, and it's really a new perspective on life. It's a perspective I hope you gain. And if not, if I can jumpstart it this week, I want to do so. But to do it, I want to ask 2 questions, and Lord willing, answer them for you. How do you know the will of God on your life? It is a question we've been trained to ask. It sounds holy, and it sounds good. It sounds as if we are being good Christians when we ask this question. But the question itself is flawed upon arrival. And I'll show you this through James and through other parts of Scripture. But how do you know the will of God for your life? You know, this question evolves typically from a place in your life where you hit a fork in the road. What do I do, God, in this relationship? What do I do with this job? What do I do in my marriage? What do I do with my health? What do I do? And it's ironic, and I think it proves the flaws of the question, because when it only percolates in these forks in the roads in our lives, what about every other moment of your life? Why does the question not come up? Is it irrelevant on the small things? Is it irrelevant in those areas of life that you feel as if you have control? You see, the question percolates at these forks in the road for what I see as one reason. We want to maintain the status quo. We do not want to make a decision, right? If we pursue this question to the end result, and if we believe we found God's answer, the end result would be peace, joy, and happiness. Right? We don't want to date or marry a person that's going to cause havoc on our life. So we would assume that God is found in the answer that is the easiest path to take in life. We don't want to create financial stress. God, what's your will? Take this job or not? we would believe his answer, his will, is found in the easiest path. But see, this question in and of itself proves that it comes from a flawed place within us. But I want to answer this question for you, because if you're like me, you've asked it before, and you've asked it, and you ask it in prayer. And a lot of times you're just seeking and searching God's direction. It comes from a place of innocence, but it proves there's a lot of maturity that can take place. So we'll get there. But there's a second question that follows this, that when you answer this question correctly, a second question will arise. How do you handle life when it doesn't go as planned? How do you handle life when the divorce does happen? Or when the medical images come back positive? Or when the car breaks down and you don't have the money? When the job isn't panning out like you thought it would? How do you handle life in these situations? These two questions, they go hand in hand, but they're heavy on us. As children of God, we want to be walking in step with the Spirit. We want to know the will of God. But yet when we hit chaos or resistance, how does that measure up? How do you handle that? How do you deal with that? If you were in the will of God, well, where's the resistance coming from? Where's the burden coming from? We'll explore these two topics as we dig into James chapter 4. Come now, you who say, James chapter 4, verse 13. Come now, you who say, I feel like that come now is kind of like our, come on, guys. Come on, gals. Come on. You who say, today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town and spend a year and trade to make a profit. He's calling these people out. Got a feeling you're in this mix. Because, I got the ability to preach and think about my to-do list. What I have to do immediately following the service, the people I've got to follow up with. I'm able to process that as I preach to you. Do you have a to-do list? A calendar that has your dental appointments or your doctor appointments or your I need to meet this person appointments? I got calendars for my calendars. Come now, you who say today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town and spend a year there and trade and make profit. He's calling out those who make plans. Plans for today is who he's calling out. If you've made plans today, he's talking to you. You got plans to go to a birthday party right after service, he's talking to you. You got plans tomorrow. What's wrong with this, James? Man, why are you picking on this? This person here, he wants to go and create a business and take care of his family. He just wants to earn money. What's wrong with that? What's the deal, James? Verse 14. You do not know what tomorrow will bring. You don't know what today will bring. What is your life? That word life is the biological term for your flesh and bone and the tissues and the organs. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Poof, like a firework. Did you see that? That was awesome. I missed it. You're like a firework. You're like a mist. Poof, and you're gone. It's not, it's, what is he getting at? You're gone. What is the problem of making plans if you're like a mist that vanishes? You're here today and gone tomorrow. One thing on my bucket list of to-dos is not to have a bucket list of to-dos. and I've accomplished it. Maybe you have plans, things you like to do before you die. That's great. Your plans are awesome. Your desires are actually an expression of an intelligent designer behind you. Where do your desires come from? Just think about this for a second. Where do your desires in life come from? Did you just stir them up? I mean, okay, so you have a desire to be an engineer or to drive a tractor. I mean, apparently, for you engineers, you saw an Excel sheet and you got excited one day. I mean, how did that connection happen? And I see Excel sheets, and I hit that X button in the corner, and I go get on a tractor because that excites me. Or you look at a guitar, and that excites. I mean, just think about this. Where does your desires in life come from? You can't fabricate them. You could try, but then those desires become work. No, it's the expression of an intelligent designer who's downloaded a personality in you. You are unique and uniquely made. You have desires and you have wills and passions that are specifically designed for you. The body of Christ is made of many different members. And it was the purpose of God. So you have plans. And they're not wrong. In fact, don't get James wrong. He hasn't said they're wrong. He's not dished on your plans yet. And he may not. Your plans are the reflections of your desires. And your desires are the reflection of the Creator who's put you together to have these desires. And they are an image of your purpose in life. Why He has you here. So verse 14, you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Verse 15. James has gotten the rap, the book of James has gotten the rap of being the book of obedience in the New Testament. You cannot buy that. You cannot buy that. Because if you do, you'll take this verse all wrong. Instead, James says you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. If this is the book of obedience, what you should do is write this on a memo pad and stick it on your cabinets and say this before you say, hey, I'm going to the doctor's, if the Lord wills, and I live. I mean, before any expressed plan, you should utter these words. I mean, if this is just a fulfill this command, you ought to say this. We need no other explanation. We just do it because we're told to do it. But the mere fact that James, he goes on to explain what is going on here is telling us, logically, this is not just footsteps that we're taking. There's something behind this. And you've seen this in James. All of James up to this point, you probably don't have like 10 list of commands you've received from James sitting through this. Instead, if I sat down with you, those of you who have followed me through James, you've probably received a message of God, your old self, your new self, and how it all comes together. You've probably heard a lot about your behaviors of your old corrupt self, about how it likes to destroy, how it likes the destruction of the tongue. You've heard a lot about your new self and how it was born and saved by the Word of God, and how you receive in meekness the Word of God, and how you are now called a doer of the Word. And you've seen the behaviors of both come together in James. But he goes on to explain why he says this. But notice, he says, if the Lord wills, he starts with, we will live. If the Lord wills, you will live and do this or that. That this or that are your plans. That this or that is going to that town to make a profit. If the Lord wills, you'll do this and that. If the Lord wills, you'll even carry out those plans. That and can cause a little bit of confusion, because is the do this or that connected to we live? Or is the do this or that connected to if the Lord wills? I believe it's connected to the Lord wills, but regardless, you're not alive. You're not doing this or that. But you breathe because the Lord wants you to breathe. You haven't vanished because the Lord doesn't want you to vanish yet. Your life, your biological life hasn't died because the Lord does not want that for you. Which means the this or that needs to be carried out. That He has a purpose for you to still be here. That you're not a mistake sitting in these chairs. That it's not by accident that you're still breathing. If the Lord wills, you live. Therefore, if you're alive, which I'm guessing you are, God has shown His favor upon your life. He needs you. He wants you here today. And tomorrow, if the Lord wills. It gives a lot of purpose to your plans. Because it's only by His will that you live. And you're living. So the Lord has a will, a desire, an intention to keep you alive. I want to put this together. Again, I want to repeat it because your breath is not by accident. You're not here by accident. You won't be driving home, if you make it home, by accident. The Lord has a purpose in you. And some of you may believe you're just an utter failure, a mistake, and no good can come from you. Then you have to answer the question, why does He still want you alive? Why does He still want you here? And then you put together your desires and your plans, and you begin to formulate a rational answer to this question of why you're still here. To carry out the desires of your heart, which Psalm 34 says will ultimately become the desires of the Lord's heart. You see, my will, thy will, and they come together ultimately. If the Lord wills. So you're already walking in the will of the Lord, just to let you know. You're there. You're in it. You will do this or that. But as it is, now this actually exposes what's going on to the person who makes plans and is devoid of, how do you say this? I mean, it seems like James is splitting a hair here. Do you really need to say, if the Lord wills, I'll live, and then we'll go do this? We'll go to lunch? We'll hit the fast food drive-through? Is that what we really need to say? Or is He changing the way you view things? Is He changing your perspective? As it is, you boast in your arrogance. We are all called arrogant, who don't see our life through the eyes and the will of God. That's kind of heavy and harsh, but when you see the definition of arrogance, by the way, it's evil too. James has done this multiple times. He talks about your flesh, the corruption of your flesh, and then how to operate out of your new life. The arrogance means to make more of yourself than reality justifies. Poof. There's not much reality there. Who promises what you cannot perform? You have no ability to promise yourself you'll be alive tomorrow. You cannot. You are incapable of carrying out that promise in and of yourself. Be like, hey, $1.6 billion I heard. Mega millions. I'm going to have to change that to the mega billions. if I was to tell you, you played the lottery and you're going to win, it'd be kind of arrogant of me, right? I don't really got that ability to produce that promise. But you likewise, if you played the lottery, maybe you envisioned the money in your bank account. That's what I thought. Because I have too. Didn't pan out last time. I guess I should have envisioned my money in the state's bank account. Reality would have justified that. There's no given that you're going to win the lottery, and there's no given that you're going to be here tomorrow. Those are all beyond your capabilities and your control. They lies in the power of the Lord. Well, I want to ask you a series of questions in order to trick you. I've just put that out front, okay? So when I do trick you, you can say, he told me he's going to trick me. He still tricked me, okay? Here we go. Is the Lord in control? You can answer the questions. I'm leading you down a path of deception. So go ahead and answer the question. Play with me. Okay. And you're correct. That's not a trick question. Does the Lord know every detail of your life? Good. Sometimes I can't trick you because y'all are on to me tricking you. So I figure I'm going to take a new approach here. By just telling you. Does the Lord know what Gone and tricked myself. This is a last-minute trickery trick that I put together right before church started. Does the Lord know what tomorrow holds? Yes. Are there any mistakes with God? No. Man, I don't even need to be preaching. Well, but maybe I do. Can you say with 100% certainty that you know what tomorrow holds? No way. So, who should you place your trust in for tomorrow? God or yourself? All right, verse 17. So whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him it is sin. You've just proven that you know it is better to trust God than yourself. You know the right thing to do. If you don't do it, it's sin. It's missing the mark. You miss God. You know it is better to trust Him than to trust yourself. You know it is better to place your plans in His hands than it is to rely on your own strength. You just told me you know this. So if you don't, you're missing the mark. Man, I want to say you're missing God's will, but you're not. You are operating out of the corruption of the flesh. See, he split a hair here. A hair here. He split a hair. He's just proven that there is a part of you that knows what to do. So he says if you don't do it, you're proving you're not operating out of the part of you that knows what to do. You're the double-minded person back in James chapter 1. James, there's a reason he sounds like the Proverbs of the New Testament. And I believe because he operates strongly out of the Proverbs of the Old Testament. I want to give you James 4:13 through 17 through the lens of Proverbs 16. And you're going to feel as if James has memorized these 9 verses and is living off of them. The plans of the heart belong to you. The plans of the heart belong to you. The answer of the tongue is from the Lord. You've got to see in the imagery what is he driving at. That deep within you are desires and plans that belong. God gave them to you. They belong to you. But the outcome of those plans, that belongs to the Lord. Verse 2, all all your ways, the ways of man, they're pure in your own eyes. Right? What you should do today, tomorrow, I mean, that seems pure. It seems innocent. But the Lord weighs the Spirit. But Romans, I believe, 10, we have a spirit within us that is always interceding on our behalf, praying in accordance to the will of the Father. He weighs deep within you what you really want, what your true desires are, and what you need. So commit your work to the Lord. Your plans, your desires, your passions will be established. This is what James is saying, right? I mean, if the Lord wills, commit your work to the Lord, and they will be established. The Lord, it seems like the Proverbs here takes a hard turn, but it doesn't. Because we now begin to address the question of, well, what if things don't go as planned? The Lord has made everything for its purpose, even the wicked, for the day of trouble. The wicked have a purpose. Your sin has a purpose. And if you believe in Romans 8:28, it's got it, even your sin has to be for your good. And you just told me you believe that there are no mistakes with God. He is in control. The Lord has made everything for its purpose, even the wicked for the day of trouble. Everyone. Watch this. Watch how they thread this needle here of knowing the will of God and being in it. Everyone who is arrogant in heart, this sounds like James, is an abomination to the Lord. Arrogant in heart, you're an abomination to the Lord. Be assured you will not go unpunished. We can talk about that all day long. But I'll tell you, if you live by your flesh, you're going to feel a heavy hand upon you. By steadfast love and faithfulness, iniquity is atoned for. The arrogant heart is atoned for. That your Father atones for your arrogance through His Son. Thus, even the evil within us had purpose. Because it was that drove the Son of God to a cross. By the fear of the Lord, one turns away from evil. This is the beginning of wisdom. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Go back into James. We see that this is placing yourself under the order of God. When a man's ways please the Lord, He makes even his enemies to be at peace with him. Better is a little with righteousness. Better is few plans with righteousness and great revenues with injustice. The heart of a man plans his way. The Lord establishes your steps. Nobody's knocking on your plans. Your plans are a gift from God. Acts 18:21 is just a picture of how James 4 plays out. Paul is just coming to Ephesus. He's getting ready to leave Ephesus, and he says this, "But on taking leave of them, Paul said, 'I will return to you if God wills.'" He set sail from Ephesus. And I know Paul believes that. He said, "I will be back. That's my plan, assuming that the Lord establishes my steps in it. But if I'm not here, it just wasn't the will of God." You see, Paul keeps himself in a state of flexibility. Everything is written in pencil in his world. And this is where we ought to be. How do you know the will of God? You can't know the will of God. You would have no need for faith and trust. But you can know you're in it. You can know you're in the will of God because you're alive. Because you have plans. Because you said you know there are no mistakes with God. So therefore, where you are at right now is the will of God. Where you will be at 1:30 this afternoon is the will of God. And if you make it to 2:30, it is the will of God. Have plans. And place them under the order of God. I want to share a couple stories with you and I'll be done. One, how this works out in my life. How I have a process that I use to know which direction to go on these big forks in life. And then I want to give you a story of how to handle these situations when you're in the will of God and life hits a brick wall. How do you handle it? So just a few months ago, we've been talking that me and my wife, my wife would be getting off work, that she would no longer work full time, that she would come to the family business, she'd be a stay-at-home mom, etc. At the same time, I had a plan and a desire to buy a piece of equipment for the business and move the business in a direction. The cost of this piece of equipment is, it was in the 6 digits. So her getting off work, us losing health insurance, and then my desire to move our family business in a direction just didn't seem to make sense. What do? I have a plan, I have a desire. She had a desire to get off work. We made a commitment 4 months ago that she would get off work if X, Y, and Z happened, and X, Y, and Z happened, and therefore we got her off work. I felt like I could possibly sink my family financially. I didn't know what to do. But I knew God did. I really knew God knew what to do. And so I told my wife, this is how I do this. Okay, you may be different, but this is how I do it. I said, there's 3 criteria that have to be fulfilled for me to make this purchase. I had to do something with finances. I had to do something with jobs in the queue and something else. And I said, if 2 of the 3 are fulfilled and one's left out, then it's not of God, and we walk away. And we have to stick to that. We can't bend the rules. It's just we have our process, and these 3 criteria have to be fulfilled. And if they are fulfilled to the extent that we believe they should be fulfilled, then we will move forward. And all 3 were fulfilled. And in fact, the moment I called my wife and I said, look, man, the price came in range. The other 2, I don't remember what they were. The other 2 fell in line. I said, I'm doing it. So it's a little nerve-wracking, absolutely, but I'm doing it. I hung up the phone, my phone rang, and I got a call for a bid that required this piece of work. It was the biggest bid I've ever received. And I asked the guy, how'd you find me? I haven't even bought the equipment yet. He said, and he was an hour south. I just Googled you. I just Googled this and your name popped up. I didn't even know we were out in Google. And God in that moment says, it's okay, son, move forward. Do it. Okay, so am I going to move forward and start wondering, is this God's will, or am I going to doubt? No, this is what God wants. And yet, in my world, if one of those 3 did not meet up, 2 of those 3, 3 of those 3, and I pushed through it, I probably could have bought the piece of equipment and it'd be a much different story right now. You could say I didn't go unpunished, and my family would be suffering for it. But I've seen it over and over again because of you. Because of you. That God leads me every moment of every day in His will. I can't miss it. Rather, I just need to give attribution to the fact that He is the one who's brought me to this point. And He's done it through my plans and my desires. How cool is that? You get to be you. You get to be you, and all the fun that is wrapped up inside of you gets to come out And you can go live life the way you're designed to live it and just trust in the Lord along the way. And you'll be in His will. But sometimes, maybe more often than not, life does fall apart. And it doesn't happen the way you hoped. Because if this is God's will, then it all should just come together. Life should be all peaceful and joy, but James says joy in the midst of trials. The only reason you need peace is because there's chaos around you. We don't need peace in a peaceful world. So the reality is, you will be in the will of God, and yet the world will come caving in on you. I've got 4 brothers. Some of the best men in the world. If you ever have the privilege of meeting them, you basically will be shaking the hands with Jesus. And I'm honored to be amongst the middle of 5 sons in my family, and I'm honored to watch them live their lives and to their ups and their downs. I get to witness all of it. I've got 2 younger brothers, and one of them was living with me a couple years back. And he was going through a hard divorce. Some of you've been down that road. And he was living with me, and one night, I was dead asleep. Something woke me up. Somebody talking in the house. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. And, so I get up, a little nerve-wracking, wishing I had a gun or something at that point. I didn't know who was in the house, what was going on, and I'm kind of walking through the house, just listening, trying to figure out who's in my house, what are they saying, what are they doing. As I go back to my daughter's room, her door's shut, no noise from her door, and I go to the room that my brother's in, and his door's shut, but the noise is coming from his room. I stopped, and I just listened, and he wasn't talking. He was singing. Now, my brother was going through probably one of the hardest seasons of his life. I would never fully understand what he was going through or the depth of his pain. But I'll tell you this, his life wasn't going as planned. And I'm standing at his door, and I'm listening to him, 2 o'clock in the morning, just sing. It is well with my soul. I didn't ask him for several weeks about that night. I didn't want to feel as if he couldn't sing in the middle of the night in my house. But an opportunity presented itself a month or 2 later, and I asked him, I said, Ron, I said, a few nights, several nights ago, I heard you singing in the bedroom. What was going on? He says, Greg, sometimes that's all you can do is sing. So when I sing, he said, my soul quiets down. And I'm reminded that I'm okay, even though I'm not okay. How do you handle life when it doesn't go as planned? This is why I'm preaching to you. Because I want to encourage you to trust in those hard times. I want to encourage you because you know there are no mistakes with God. You know He knows every detail. You know that He's in full control. So you can sing yourself back to sleep. You can pray yourself back to sleep. You can do whatever is on your heart to walk yourself back into the throne room. Let me pray for you.